When you and I ask the question, if we do, does God make mistakes? Well, we might come up with evidence by looking at something like mosquitoes and say there's no need for them. They don't seem to do anything good in the ecological system. So therefore, other than feeding certain animals that eat them, we could do without them. All they do is cause harm. In fact, millions and millions of people have died because of those pesky tiny creatures. It's interesting to note that right now, scientists have said we can eliminate a genetic strain of mosquitoes. They're working on that to reduce the number of deaths, reduce the incidence of disease in the human population, maybe even in animal populations, still leaving a sliver of the genetic pool of mosquitoes that we need for those animals that rely on them, but reducing the impact. So I'm not really here to talk about mosquitoes, though I don't like mosquitoes. What I'm here to talk about is the pesky little flaws in us, the evidence that we might find in our own selves for the case that God makes mistakes, because ultimately, why would God have made me this way and not that way? I think about the fact that you and I, when we look in a mirror, I say you and I, knowing with certainty that you and I look in the mirror and see our flaws. We might not see the beauty that other people see in us, even if it's only in a corner of our face, those beautiful eyes, who knows what it is. But the reality is that human inclination is to look in the mirror and see, when we're looking at ourselves, the worst in us. We tend to see the things that, even if we're made up, even if we've had work done on ourselves, even if we're wearing a mask, we see around it, we see the flaws that can't be hidden, at least to us. Whereas other people, and I believe God, sees the perfection even in our what we perceive to be momentary or changing imperfection. But again, the emphasis isn't on our physicality, because that's far less interesting than our character. I think it might be good that we see our character flaws as well. Maybe we need to see those in the mirror just as often as we see the things that we don't like around our eyes, lips, nose, or anywhere else. What if every day when we look in the mirror, we make a point of saying, what is it that I can attack today, in the best sense of the word? What character flaw of mine can I focus on and bring to light and say, I'm going to hold this, what I perceive to be ugliness in me, this character flaw, and today, this one day, between now and sunset, I'm going to do my best to reduce its incidence, reduce its impact, see if I can catch myself, inhibit my habitual rush to this particular way of being. I'll give you an example. One is judgment. Most of us struggle with judgment. We see other people, we immediately class ourselves better, usually not worse, but also better and worse than them. But what if it's a fallacy? What if it just gets in the way of being human with one another? And what you and I can do today is say, let me pray and use that prayer as impetus to inhibit that rush to judgment, see the beauty in all human beings, see their frailty just as clearly and surely they see mine. We often want to be somebody else. Kids certainly do. We want to be our superheroes, whether they're on television, in books, on movies, or in our neighborhood. We want to be like the people whom we admire and idolize, and less like the selves that we truly are. It reminds me of a story from the book of Samuel that I love. All of you know the story, presumably, of little David who slays big Goliath, the giant, the Philistine. And what you may not be aware of is what happened just before David takes to the field. David, the young shepherd boy, who ends up just going out there naked with a sling. I don't mean bare naked, but without protection, just having a sling over his shoulder. And what happens is he goes to King Saul and says, clearly, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight the Philistines, and I'm going to fight Goliath. And Saul knows the right solution. He's going to give him his own armor. So he puts his giant bronze helmet on David's shoulders, and he puts all of David's armor on, or Saul, the king's armor on the shepherd boy. And what ends up happening is David can't walk. He can't move because it's so heavy. It's so clunky, as you'd imagine. It's not for him. It might be for somebody else. It might be for that king, Saul, in battle. But David ends up, as we know, stripping it off, leaving it behind, and taking out his weakness, his smallness, and bringing out his strength in battle. What if we could do the same thing? What if we cannot see ourselves as the pesky mosquito, but see the giants in us? I don't mean just in terms of battles that we do against other people. I mean battles that we do with ourselves. What if today is a day to say, let me not try to be somebody else. Let me try to see the mirror with clarity, see myself, strength and weakness, all of it by design, all of it perfect and necessary for me to be the best version of myself. And let me take that with a spirit of generosity toward the people that I encounter. Maybe today is the day that I can grow in that small way and realize when I go to sleep tonight that I did better, that I went to battle and that I won. Even if that win was tiny, maybe nobody noticed it except ourselves, that we didn't rush to judge another human being, that we literally and figuratively opened the door for them, that we were willing to see their beauty, their goodness, even with all of their flaws mirroring our own. I hope this is helpful for you. One thing I want to say as an addendum, a tag to this, is I'm recording episodes of my podcast, which is called The Meaning Mindset with Rabbi Ron. The release date, it starts in September. It'll go on for, more than half a year every week. My guest yesterday was the author of The Way to Surrender, The Way of Serenity, Father Jonathan Morris. Amazing guy and a great conversation. And his book has really inspired me. It's clearly talking about the serenity prayer. And he, as a former Catholic priest who then went to Pope Francis asking for special dispensation to leave the priesthood, and we discussed that in the podcast, the journey into that part of his life and the journey out and where he is now, what he's doing. It's a fascinating conversation, I believe. I found this prayer. He takes the simple lines of the Serenity Prayer and he parses them out. He pulls them out and helps us have a much, much deeper understanding of them. So with that said, this Friday night, which is, I believe, the 9th of August at 7:30, we're going to have a special service dedicated to serenity. Serenity applicable to every human being, any one of you that wants to come and find the peace of Shabbat Shalom, as we call it, but also be inspired by people who are in recovery from addiction. And I say inspired, be prepared to come and be inspired. Something will change in you when you realize the battles that other people go through and the bravery, the courage that they bring to life on a daily basis, and the gifts that their stories offer in relation to ours. I hope you join us this Friday evening at Valley Outreach Synagogue and Center for Jewish Life. Take good care of yourself.